It is a very unique sound. It just opens, just whoa.
I got into music generally because I had a father who was very musical, and I would hear music played around the house, both kind of acoustically and albums played on record players and what have you. I ended up doing a master's degree in social anthropology and ethnomusicology, and spent some time at a field site in Northern Territory, Australia, in a little community called Yirrkala. And I lived with a man there named Jalu Guruwiwi, who's a kind of elder of his community, and also is known internationally as the custodian of the instrument, the didgeridoo. Though his society is seen from the outside as maybe primitive or traditional, this is an instrument that is constantly evolving even within their own culture, and that they would like it to continue to spread out across the world, maybe not under the guise of primitive music, but something that's interacting with the global world. So I took it upon myself to come back to Texas and make my own versions of these instruments using Texas woods, Texas materials and industrial processes to kind of show that the instrument is indeed growing and becoming part of a musical aesthetic that we here in Texas appreciate. Aboriginal music became an interest of mine early on in life. I remember being at a high school presentation, and a visiting musician brought a didgeridoo with him. And it was unlike any other musical experience I'd had before, in the sense that this instrument sounded very futuristic, almost layered with so many different sounds within a single pitch that comes out of the instrument. But it was produced just by an individual musician, and there were no valves or holes that were modulating the sound. It's essentially a hollow tube made out of wood. In Australia, Aboriginal people can walk through forests and put our ears up against a tree and kind of hit it with a hatchet, and you can hear which are hollow and which are not, and then cut a section, shape the exterior, and you have an instrument. Here in Texas, I have to select woods that maybe approximate the density and hardness of the eucalyptus species used in Australia, and then put those wood pieces through a process of, coring and refining the wood, sealing holes so that it becomes playable as an instrument. I like to use live oak, mesquite, black walnut. Once I've selected the wood that I want to use, I typically cure it for 3 to 5 years, just let it dry and stabilize, and then begin the process of removing bark from the exterior, shaping the exterior, splitting the entire log then on a bandsaw and hollowing each half. If you don't consider the drying period, it's probably 60 to 70 hours of work per instrument. The sounds of the instruments that I make versus the sounds of the instruments that you would hear in Australia, they do vary in some respects. In Aboriginal communities, they speak their own native languages, and in those languages there are particular sounds that don't exist in English. So if you're going to play the way that they do, you have to learn those sounds and learn how to implement them in a rhythmic way. So while your lips are vibrating, you would start to say phrases. Even though there's a vast cultural difference between people who live here in Texas and those who live very far afield, there's still so much in common, and I think that's borne out through practices like music.
You never know exactly what's going to happen, but it's beautiful. And you'll see people standing up with their eyes closed, just kind of mystically moving with it.
Jazz, rock and roll, some hip hop, funk. I try to put all of that into the way that I play. We hear music, whether it be something like the didgeridoo from an Aboriginal community, or maybe country western guitar from West Texas. And even if you can't understand the words of the music itself still conveys human emotion, and that's kind of universal.